Jules, we should remind ourselves that, for me, one of the things that have marked the City era is they've been smart, but they've also been adaptable to change. Obviously, going back the last couple of years, they lost Raheem Sterling, they lost Zinchenko, they lost Gabriel Jesus, all by choice instead of by being disciplined, by not saying, oh, you got a year left, here's a new contract because you've been such a big part of our success. No, they said, all right, a year left, this is the number, you don't like it, you go. The same thing with De Bruyne, with his contract, he got 2 years. And of course, this last summer, they lost Riyad Mahrez, who was older.
Cancelo left before.
Cancelo, left because he didn't like him anymore.
But still.
Gundogan, who was a huge part of last season, moved on. It's good stewardship of the club. It does sometimes leave you perhaps a little bit wanting. And if I look at City this season compared to last season's team was better, not just because they won the treble. They were better in the league.
Yeah.
And as you were telling me off air, one of the things about this season is City's record against the top six or the other 5 teams in the top 6 wasn't what won them the title.
No, 2 wins in those 10 games. So the 2 against Liverpool, the 2 against Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea and Villa, only 2 wins. There's a lot of draws, 6 of them, 2 defeats, away at Villa and away at Arsenal. But clearly, considering they had 7 draws and 3 defeats, there's just one other defeat outside of the one against Villa and Arsenal, which was Wolves away. There's one other draw outside of the 6 draws against the other top 5 teams in the top 6, which was at home to Crystal Palace. And the rest is only win, which means they destroyed everybody between 7th and 20. And that consistency in those games, you can look at a table and you think, oh yeah, you're going to win the title because you're going to beat Liverpool home and away, or at least at home, or because you're going to beat Arsenal, who are your competitors and your closest rivals and the contenders, etc. No, it's not this season. In the past, maybe, but this season, you won it because when you went to Fulham, you won, and Arsenal didn't. And that is eventually what made the difference.
I take issue a little bit with the destroyed word you used. They
destroyed. They just won,
but
all those games.
I seem to remember, and anecdotally, and don't ask me about specific games because I'm not going to remember them.
Yeah,
I'm thinking Brentford, perhaps one of them where they beat them 1-0 at home. They didn't necessarily wipe the floor. They had a lot of close games this year where they gutted it out and won, and maybe deservedly so. But it doesn't feel to me like they blew away the opposition with the same ease.
No, and you're right. It's because they were not as good as last season. Because Haaland has a season at 27 goals, which is a good amount, of course, but it's a human amount, not like last season. And that's why, because KDB was out for the first half of the season, and even if you get a better Foden than last year, it's still not the same because Gundogan has left, and really you haven't replaced him and his importance maybe, and what a key role he can have in the way you play with the ball. Same, Doku has been a great signing, but only by patches there and then. We saw in the last game against West Ham what he can do, but he hasn't done it consistently enough. There's flashes, obviously, the Brighton game, for example, or the Bournemouth game. But overall, it's still not consistent enough. So that's why I think you're right. They still have the best attack. They've scored, 96 goals this season in the league in 38 games. They have the second best defense. Their goal difference is plus 65 or something ridiculous like that. So they still have been very good, but to the standard that we knew. And in the end, 91 points. They're still 7 short of the 98 that they won when Liverpool pushed them all the way. They're still very short of the 100 points that they got 5 years ago or 4 years ago. So, it's a very good season because it's the 4th in a row and nobody has never done before. And that was the objective, more than winning another Champions League. The treble would have been great because 2 trebles in a row has never been done before. But I think what they really wanted was to be the first in history to have 4 in a row.
2 doubles in a row has never been done before either, apparently. And, of course, they played Manchester United in the FA Cup final. I think it's fair to say they're favourites for that one. In terms of succession, of building from here, and we'll get to Pep in a minute and his future. We talked about Foden before. I've been campaigning for Foden to play centrally. We saw it in this game. Comes at the expense of Bernardo Silva. I think it's pretty clear.
And a bit of De Bruyne as well, I think. But yeah.
That's I mean, those are the two guys who play central, right? I mean, Bernardo Silva is the guy who went out outside. I'm trying to project forward about what Pep might do, next season. He's under contract until 2025. And when I look at this, I would imagine that we might see more of a return to, you can call it 4-4-2 or whatever, but essentially maybe De Bruyne further forward or Alvarez with Haaland, some sort of setup like that, and then a winger, like a real winger on the other side.
And where's Foden?
No, and Foden central.
Yeah, but not at the same level as Rodri. So you're in the 4-4-2.
Yeah. But I'm not. You can call it a diamond if you like.
Okay.
Or maybe that with a back three. But I guess my point is, when I ask myself about Haaland, his critics say he's one-dimensional and hasn't been as good and blah blah blah. I think the way to unlock more out of Haaland isn't just to have him do what he's really good at over and over again. And 27 goals is still a phenomenal number. But I think it's getting him to evolve his game. And I think this is something that he can do. And I think the best way for him to do that is actually having a player with him, a player around him.
Yeah. Which was Alvarez's case when De Bruyne was injured the first half of the season. If I was Pep, I would not change anything. Now, I think he can't do it in every game, especially the top games. But I'll play Foden and KDB in 2-10s behind Haaland. I'll play Rodri on his own, and I will play Doku or Grealish on the left and Bernardo Silva for most of the right, which he can't do in every game because you need Bernardo Silva to be a bit deeper in the build-up phase of it, which I understand, or Kovacic. Or you go and get Bruno Guimaraes or Paqueta and you put them in that role. But then you have to make a choice because then you can't play Bernardo and Foden and KDB as well if you have a winger on the left-hand side.
My question here, though, would be, if you don't change anything, to me, that would be the biggest sign that, and this is taken over to Pep with his contract expiring 2025, that he's thinking of leaving, that he's not going to extend.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get a clue this summer. I think this team has to evolve. I think they need to add pieces. As you know, I'm not Julien Alvarez, very good player. I don't think he is an exceptional player. Mm-hmm. And for me, if you play with Haaland all the time, and Haaland gets hurt or Haaland goes missing, even if you play Alvarez there, you're playing a very, very different style because he's got a different skill set. I would expect them. I think the clue's going to be, not expect them, but if they bring in a striker who can do some of what Haaland does, dialogue with Haaland, maybe play wide in some situations, or maybe move Alvarez back out wide, I think that's something that this team would really benefit from for the next phase of their evolution, right? Because we've had so many different iterations of Pep over the years. It's easy to forget that. I think he looks at this and he says, we weren't as good as we could have been. It's not just because, Haaland only scored 27 goals. There were other factors. Maybe Kovacic turned out, hey, look, he's not Gundogan, or, many reasons to go with it. So I'm going to be fascinated by what happens there. Obviously, KDB's got a year left. Bernardo Silva's got 2 years left, and there's rumors about him maybe wanting to go, maybe not.
He wanted to go last summer already,
these keep coming back, right? Time and again. So I think at some point this summer, Pep's going to say, all right, everybody stay. We're going to go and do this again. We're going to win another treble. We'll keep the whole crew together. Or if he's thinking, you know what, I genuinely think I'm going to be around beyond 2025, then I think we could see some significant changes to this group.
I think you're right. I mean, he arrived in the summer 2016, so next summer will be 9 years, which is obviously by far the longest he's ever stayed anywhere. Really, he said he was tired yesterday, which you would be after a season like that, because, as you said, it was not always easy for them. They were not always great. I think there's even a case to be made that maybe Arsenal were the better team overall in the whole of the Premier League season. I know City won it, so they must be the best, of course, but that maybe Arsenal were just that little bit better overall in the whole season. So I think it would have been tiring, the disappointment by losing to Real Madrid in the way they did on penalties in the Champions League. Can't have been nice either. There's still the FA Cup, but even that, remember that period they had when they lost to Newcastle in the League Cup, when they lost at Wolves, there was a draw, they drew some games. People were saying And City were quite quick to remind everybody there in the winning title videos. I don't know if you saw, but they used my voice, by the way. They used one of my lines in that video that gone viral. People kind of wrote them off a little bit when they were third, when Liverpool and Arsenal were doing better. So it would have been a tiring season. And I can understand where he's coming from by saying that. And maybe you're right. Maybe he sees it the same way as you, Gabby. In the sense that 9 years or 9th season coming, if you commit to another 2 or 3 years minimum, you're right. There's a lot of things you have to change. There's a lot of things that you need to foresee already, that you need to plan ahead. Whereas if he says, listen, this is my last season, let's have this one last dance together, whatever you want to call it. Let's all stick together. And then the club can think about the future. I'm not. I'm just going to think about next year and making this squad even better. Have a better Guardiola, have a better Doku, have a better Grealish, who, to be fair, was in and out. Have a better KDB for the whole season. All of that. And then he can go and win again, for sure.
Flip side to that is, of course, we mentioned the 115 charges before. I don't know how City can move or operate until they know how that one's going to turn out.
That's true. And Pep also said that if we are proven guilty, when the club always said to me that we were not guilty, then I walk out.
Because he says, as he said in a quote, I will no longer be your friend.
Yeah.
It's a sweet Pep. My final point on this is, I don't know who gets medals, who doesn't get medals, but whoever's in charge of the medical side at Manchester City and at Arsenal, they need to get medals. Because when I look at how the season unfolds and the impact of injuries, and injuries happen every year, and this might be another thing, maybe supporting Pep's point, that change is required and you can't sit on your laurels. This is a season in which, other than Arsenal, Liverpool absolutely hammered by injuries, Chelsea hammered by injuries, Manchester United hammered by injuries, Newcastle hammered by injuries, Spurs in the second part of the season hammered by injuries. When you talked about their performance, and Villa too, by the way, it's easy to forget because they were out for so long, but they had a really, really rough ride with injuries as well. It seems like City and Arsenal were the two teams that, with some exceptions, obviously Stones and Timber, whatever.
Haaland as well.
We're largely untouched with it. Yeah, but Haaland still played a ton of games, right?
Yeah, but he still missed, a month and a half.
But it's not comparable.
Right, for sure.
You look at this and you say, hey, that could be us next year. And how much would those injuries have hurt us if we lost our big guns for these games? And how are we going to insulate ourselves against it? We can praise the team doctors all we like, but we also know that there's a ton of luck and randomness to injuries. And that's the one thing which would maybe make me, obviously I think City would have still won the title if everybody on every team had been fit. It's highly likely they would have won the title.
Yeah.
But it would have been much closer. And some of those games against the top six that they drew, maybe they would have lost. Yeah. Because it's one thing playing. Yeah. Even United, when you've got the Muppet Show out there and it's Johnny Evans and
Casemiro
at center back. It's a very, very different proposition.